The group text arrived 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and it felt like a tiny bolt of lightning in my hand. My brother Kevin had sent a message he clearly thought was the biggest news in the world. His CEO, a man named David Roberts, who ran one of the largest tech companies in the country, was coming to our family's house for Thanksgiving dinner. Kevin told everyone to be on their absolute best behavior, and he specifically pointed a finger at me, writing, "This means you, Sarah." I sat in my quiet office and read those words twice, feeling a strange mix of surprise and the beginning of a headache. Then I looked up at the wall and saw the framed photo hanging there. In it, I was shaking hands with that very same David Roberts, taken just a few months earlier at a board meeting where we had been discussing an $8 billion merger. My name is Dr. Sarah Whitmore. I am 41 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family has looked right through me like I was made of glass. Kevin is 3 years younger, and from the moment he arrived, he was the child who could do no wrong. When we were kids, I earned the highest grades every single term, while Kevin collected participation trophies. When I graduated at the top of my class, my father barely reacted. When Kevin barely scraped through his own graduation 5 years later with a low grade in business, Dad threw him a party like he had won a gold medal. I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious technology school in Boston, and my father's response was to ask who would want to marry a woman smarter than her husband. Kevin attended a local college on Dad's money, spent most of his time at parties, and received a brand new car when he finally finished. I kept going anyway. I earned my master's degree and then my doctorate in artificial intelligence. I wrote research papers that experts around the world cited, won major awards, and accepted a position as a professor at a renowned university in California. Dad's only question was whether I had made it to the top rank of teaching yet, as though my entire career were just another participation trophy. Meanwhile, Kevin landed an entry-level sales job at a tech company, and Dad bought expensive champagne to celebrate. Years passed. I wrote a book on ethical AI that became required reading at top universities worldwide. I flew around the globe giving lectures. I began consulting for major corporations, and within 3 years, I had been asked to join the boards of 5 of the largest companies in the country. Board positions at that level typically pay between $300,000 and $500,000 annually. I was earning over $2 million a year from those seats alone, another $800,000 from my university role, and anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 per consulting engagement. Last year, my total income exceeded $4 million. My family, however, still believed I was an underpaid teacher, because I had long since given up trying to correct them. Kevin had been at David's company for 2 years, working in sales alongside hundreds of other people at the same level, earning around $65,000 a year. But at every family gathering, it became the Kevin show. He name-dropped executives, explained technology to our parents in ways that were mostly wrong, and described deals he had nearly closed. Dad would beam and call him a rising star. Mom would lean over to me and suggest I ask Kevin for career advice since he really understood the business world. I would sit there, a woman whose work had shaped national policy and guided billion-dollar decisions, and smile and say, maybe she was right. After Kevin's group text, he sent 6 more messages over the following days. He instructed Dad to make the house look immaculate. He told Mom to prepare impressive food rather than her usual recipes. He told me to dress normally and not like a weird librarian, and to avoid talking about my teaching because it would bore everyone. The week before Thanksgiving, he called to coach me personally. He told me David was extraordinarily successful and that I needed to be respectful. He said not to ask dumb questions or discuss business or technology because I wouldn't understand it. He also told me not to mention that I was 41 and single because it was embarrassing. He said he would do all the talking, and I should smile and nod. After we hung up, I sat surrounded by my awards and research certificates and called David Roberts on his private number. He picked up immediately. When I told him that Kevin was my brother, there was a long silence before he started laughing, a real and deep laugh. He explained that Kevin had sent so many aggressive networking emails that he had finally agreed to dinner just to make it stop, and he had only planned to stay an hour. I asked him to show up and simply let things unfold naturally. He said it would be the highlight of his year. On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived at my parents' house wearing a well-cut black cashmere sweater and tailored trousers. Kevin complained immediately about the dress he had bought me. Mom asked me to change. Dad joined in. I told them calmly that if Kevin's boss had a problem with a nice sweater, he was not very good at business, and I sat down on the couch and stayed there despite Kevin's increasingly frantic attempts to relocate me to the kitchen. When the doorbell rang at 3:45, Kevin jumped up, straightened his tie, and opened the door with a wide, nervous smile. David stepped inside carrying a bottle of wine, dressed in casual trousers and a shirt. His eyes moved around the room the way experienced executives scan a space, and then they landed on me and stopped completely. He said my name like he was seeing something impossible. I said hello. Kevin's head swiveled back and forth between us as David walked toward me and asked what on earth I was doing there. I told him it was Thanksgiving and this was my family. David looked at Kevin and explained, in a calm and clear voice, that I sat on the board of directors of their company, that I had been one of their most senior leaders for 4 years, that we met every single month, and that my expertise in artificial intelligence was one of the primary reasons the company was performing so well. The room went absolutely silent. Kevin tried to laugh, but produced something closer to a cough. He said it wasn't possible. David assured him it very much was. My mother said, in a small voice, that I was just a teacher. David told her I was also a professor who helped lead 5 of the largest companies in the world. He turned to me and asked, with genuine puzzlement, why he hadn't known Kevin was my brother. I explained that I use a different surname professionally, and that my family had always assumed my work was unimportant. Kevin sat down as though his legs had stopped working. David mentioned, almost gently, that Kevin had once told him I worked in retail. Kevin's face turned a deep red. He tried to claim he had meant a university, but David held firm and said no, the word used had specifically been retail. I asked Kevin quietly why he would tell his boss I worked in a store. He had no answer. Dad asked David directly whether everything he was saying was true. David said he never misrepresents facts about work, and then he added that companies pay me $200,000 simply to speak with them for a short engagement, that my board positions pay close to $500,000 each annually, and that I likely earned more in total than David himself, though I corrected him to note his bonuses still put him ahead, while my income last year had been approximately $4.3 million. Mom put her hand over her mouth. Kevin went outside. David and I watched him through the window, his arms moving expressively while David stood calm and patient. Inside, my parents sat with a particular stillness of people rearranging everything they thought they knew. Mom said they had failed to see me. Dad looked at the floor. I told them I had tried to share these things for years. I told them I had mentioned joining new boards and they had changed the subject. I told them I owned a $3 million home they had never visited in 6 years, that I had $8 million in savings, and that the only thing I had ever struggled with was why my family did not know me. When Kevin came back inside, we sat down to dinner. David made kind conversation and then answered my father's question about what I actually did for the company with a specific story. He described a near acquisition worth $3 billion. He said I had examined the target company and identified that their core algorithms contained serious ethical flaws. I had advised the board to vote no. They followed my recommendation. 6 months later, that company collapsed under regulatory pressure exactly as I had predicted. David told them that when the senior leadership discussed the company's future, they waited for my assessment before making major decisions because I consistently identified what others missed. After dinner, Kevin and I stepped onto the porch. He told me he was sorry for all of it, the lies, the years of making me feel small, the embarrassment. He told me he had been afraid of me since we were children, that it had always been easier to tell himself I wasn't living in the real world so that he could feel significant. He said he realized he had been hiding me and that David had asked him, plainly, whether he was proud of his sister. Kevin admitted that for the first time, he understood what that question really meant. I told him I didn't know whether I could forgive him yet. I told him I had built a full and successful life without any of their belief or support, and I was no longer willing to make myself smaller so that he could feel larger. He said he understood, and I believed he meant it. David left that evening after telling my parents it had been an eye-opening visit. He told them I had testified before government bodies, that my book sat on the shelves of the world's most respected institutions, and that I had spoken at Davos among heads of state and global leaders. Mom had never heard of it. I reminded her I had mentioned it once, and she had responded by asking about Kevin's regional sales award. That night I drove home and didn't answer anyone's messages right away. I needed quiet. David called on Monday to say I had been extraordinary. At the next board meeting, he shared the story, and the room fell into an astonished silence before dissolving into laughter and something warmer than that, a recognition that invisibility is something a person can survive and even build a remarkable life inside of. My family spent the following months genuinely trying. By Christmas, they had my book on their shelf, photographs of my professional milestones on their walls, and actual questions ready for me when I arrived. Kevin had read one of my papers. Dad said he was proud of me, and though the words came slowly and with some difficulty, I could tell he meant them. Kevin eventually earned his own promotion through real work rather than performance, and we began having lunch together occasionally, two adults learning to be honest with each other for the first time. A year later, when I was named one of the most influential women in technology, my family threw a party that was genuinely about me. Kevin gave a small speech in which he said that I had proven real success does not require an audience to be real. It was not a perfect repair, but it was a beginning, and some beginnings are enough. I had learned long ago that you do not need people to believe in you in order to become something extraordinary. You only need to keep going, and let the truth eventually speak for itself.